You may find this sermon title, I Leave You Coals, somewhat curious. Maybe you even find it a little bit offensive. But coal is legendary. We've heard of coals given as threats, coals appearing as punishment for naughty children in stockings delivered by Sinterklaas on December 6th. Cornish and Welsh coal miners bring folklore and legends to the Pennsylvania coal miners, and whether good or bad luck, it was all a sign of Tommy Knocker's presence, the coal. Not only are there folklore and legends that surround coal, there is also metaphor around coal. The canary in a coal mine, the biblical saying that one heaps coals of fire on the enemy's head. The environmentalists alluding to the coal mine when describing evidence of climate change as being climate canaries. And the warning that holding on to anger is like grasping hot coals. So why would I use coal as my final gift? It seems there would be great alternatives. Wouldn't the image of a crackling fire be better? Imagine that fireplace on a cold winter's night, if you can. A kind of nostalgia around this simple time. A place to relax high-strung nerves, an invitation to slow down. The crackling fire has heated homes in generations past. It's been used to cook food and to heat water for everything from cooking to bathing. It's an imaginative link. It's a link to sentimentality, though many of its benefits are also unmistakable. Why didn't I choose that metaphor? Perhaps a raging blaze would be more apt for our times. After all, doesn't our current political and societal environment call us to rage against the dying of the light, as poet Dylan Thomas would urge? Though his poem was actually about physical death, we could argue it is equally valid for the death of a dream, the death of the rule of law, the utter dissolution of moral integrity. Yes, a blazing fire urges us onward. It seems a fitting response to both the dread that we carry in our souls and the temptation to retreat into despair. Rage against the dying of the light indeed. And again, I walked away from the raging blaze as my final gift. Well then, why couldn't you rather look at the campfires or the bonfires, both of which elicit very happy memories shared with others, roasting marshmallows and hot dogs and singing campfires? We could, but those are fleeting spaces. When the fire dies, which it always does unless it is continually fed, all activity around it dissipates as well. Instead, I leave you coals. Despite its macabre connections, I regard it as a gift, the gift of coal. In the heart of coal, the ember smolders. It takes little to revive it. It takes great effort to put it out. In our text, the words to describe Jesus' cooking fire on the beach are as follows. When they landed, they saw the charcoal fire that had been prepared with fish and some bread already being grilled. What we imagine is a scene that draws them in, a scent that quickens their step, and a cooking attendant whose invitation is reminiscent of their previous 3 years of accompanying Jesus on every step. Jesus was cooking over coals. The coals will keep heat evenly distributed indefinitely. The fish and the bread neither undercooked nor burned. The entire scene is equal parts soothing and invigorating, especially after the exhaustion and the frustration of the preceding sleepless night. When Jesus had first seen them very early in the morning, he had known which questions to ask. The people whom he addresses were fishermen. In their culture, fishing was not a leisure activity, and it was not done from a high-powered boat. No, they had to paddle their own boat. And they did that all night. 7, 8 hours maybe? But they also had to heave and sling their own large fishing nets. The goal? To catch fish. Enough fish for their own and their families' sustenance. It was a labor-intensive, demanding work that was largely depending on the whims of the weather. Sometimes explicable, other times not so much. Their lives must have been very much like those of our beleaguered and essential farm workers. Jesus' first question is about the very thing that is uppermost in their minds. "Have you caught anything?" he hollers. "Not a thing," they shout back. They were defeated, utterly drained. Jesus' follow-up suggestion addresses the very thing that they also could not comprehend. How was it that they had not even caught one single fish all night? Jesus' suggestion to try another approach may have sounded presumptuous to them. Mind you, they still hadn't realized that it was Jesus. And yes, they were still desperate enough to try this unreasonable approach, regardless of how suspect. After their catch overwhelms their capacity, only then do they realize who it is on shore. They exclaim, they scramble, their entire experience suddenly comes into sharper focus. What seems like a common evolution of a storyline is much more than that. Jesus is a master mentor, teacher, psychologist, communicator. He begins by anticipating a need. He knows where his followers will be working that night, so he chooses to meet them there. He knows how they have always eked out a living and how hard their work has always been. And he knows the hope they had had for a different life and how that hope had been shattered when he was brutally executed. Their return to fishing was a trauma response, and he recognized that. Instead of meeting them with words of admonition or subtle sarcasm, he thinks about what they may need. Jesus knows depletion when he sees it, and he embraces it and all of them without hesitation and reservation. Assessing the whole picture, he brings something with him which he knows will set a scene, while at the same time offer them a sense of familiarity and comfort. He brings fish and bread to the beach and starts up this charcoal fire. As he fans the flames to make it burn brightly at first, he has them on his mind. He allows the fire to die down to smoldering embers, all the while keeping an eye on the progress of their boat. The art of careful consideration, plus anticipating a need, plus setting the stage for the need to be met, was the order of the day. When the scene is set, it is then that he asks the question that unlocks their souls. The beautiful question, as poet David White names it. The question that contains presence and vulnerability and an invitation. Have you caught anything, friends? This question indicates that Jesus has really seen them and has taken note of exactly what they were experiencing, physically, practically, financially, and emotionally. The honest answer to this beautiful question will require vulnerability in return. They are invited to admit this to a still random stranger, that they have been hopelessly unsuccessful and that they have nothing to show for hours of toil. What an embarrassment and frustration. And yet, the question is posed with such understanding that it invites bearing the private world of their souls. The art of asking beautiful questions. But there's more to the scene. There's a Danish concept that uses the word hygge to describe a comfortable space that engenders feelings of well-being. It's about taking time away from the daily rush to be together with people you care about. After the backbreaking work and the emotion-frazzling disappointment, Jesus knew that this was a time on the beach that must create a haven of safety, inclusion, and peace. It involved the warm embers of the coal fire and the comfort of the shared meal in the presence of one another and with their beloved teacher. Jesus gives them the gift of hygge with this simple shared meal on the beach. But along with that, he gives them tangible food so that their bodies will be strengthened. And he does it in a manner that allows their nervous system to regulate in the healing space. Jesus' strategic moves give us a hint to how we can offer companioning to one another. Tend the coals of the warming soul fire so as to anticipate the need of another person by asking thoughtful, non-judgmental, beautiful questions, which will then disarm and invite vulnerability, and by providing an unhurried place of comfort and rejuvenation. In other words, keeping the comprehensive needs of people in mind. The solution doesn't need to be complex, even if people's lives are multi-layered and intricate. However, meaningful responses are thoughtful. They're deliberate. They are offered with an open heart. Neither the crackling fire nor the blazing flame would have met the moment of what Jesus' followers experienced in the water that fateful night and on the shore in the hope-filled morning. Jesus called his followers' lives and needs to mind and planned ahead. He knew when to venture towards them with a beautiful question, and he knew that a meal prepared over coals and eaten together would be just what their fatigued bodies and burdened souls needed at that moment. There was the much-needed warmth of the coals for their chilled, wet bodies to stop shivering. There was the welcome solace of fragrance of food that they recognized in the company of the one who wanted the very best for them. There was healing in this shared, welcoming, accepting space. This is how Jesus companioned his fishermen friends that morning. This is how we companion one another. So yes, I leave you coals today, not as a punishment, not instead of a holiday treat, not as an omen or as part of folklore, but as a metaphor for your lives together moving forward successfully. Coals to represent the anticipated need, the beautiful question, and the comfort of a healing space. As I leave the space whose people are very dear to me, the words of poet Nikki Giovanni express my deepest hope. If ever I touched a life, I hope that life knows that I know that touching was and still is and will always be the true revolution.